More than 2 months after February's massive freeze, hundreds of people in Central Texas are still without a home. Many renters were forced to leave their apartments because of damages that have still not been repaired. Our Jamil Donath has more.
That was our bedroom.
These are the last images Maria Romero and Arthur Jimenez have of their home.
That's all mold.
Like so many other renters in Texas, a water pipe burst in their building, flooding their apartment.
Tell Mama it's okay.
It's okay.
They not only lost their home, but almost everything in it.
We didn't have much, but he had so much there. It was his first home.
A home they can never go back to.
Having to hear my kids say, "Mom, can we go home?"
For the last 2 months, the family of 4 have shared a bed and a couch at their in-laws' mobile home in Cedar Park.
My sweater that actually came from the apartment.
Now most of their possessions fit in this laundry basket.
Okay, now you gotta turn left and right.
This is an all too familiar story for hundreds of renters in Central Texas, displaced from unlivable storm damages, which landlords have failed to fix. Romero and Jimenez lived at Rosemont Oak Valley, which has had more than 10 building code violations since the storm.
No.
You got it.
Tenant rights groups have received dozens more complaints at that same property and thousands more at many other apartment complexes.
If Rosemont had done their job, I feel like I wouldn't be in this position right now.
Jimenez lost his job to the pandemic about a year ago, so Romero is the only source of income for their family.
You ready?
Yeah.
Jimenez wakes up every morning to take her to work. Their van can barely make the roughly 30-mile commute. But she won't be worrying about getting to work much longer. Have a day. Romero lost her job. Her last day was Friday. The family was unable to find affordable housing in the city, and their only option was to move to a family property in Kingsland.
That's about an hour and a half away, so I can't. There's no way in these vehicles that I can commute here.
Romero and Jimenez say they've had support from nonprofit groups, but not enough to keep them from becoming homeless.
People are having to stay at hotels or with family, and that's not cheap.
No clothes.
The only support system they can truly rely on is each other.
And Jamil Donath joins us now with more on this story. Jamil, good morning to you. This is such a heartbreaking story, and unfortunately it's something we've seen a lot of since the February freeze. Do you have any idea just how many code violations and evictions have been made so far?
Yeah, it really is a broad sweeping situation here in Austin and really all throughout Central Texas and all of Texas. But specifically in Austin, the code department has responded to around 770 complaints, and they have about 150 active cases right now and have already issued nearly 300 notices of violation for building code violations, such as the ones here at Rosemont Oak Valley where we are this morning.
And this latest threat to the grid comes as many Texans continue to recover from February's winter storm 4 months ago. Hundreds of properties across Texas still have storm damage and repair delays, many in poor communities of color.
Yeah, that's right. Our Jamil Donath has covered numerous stories of families living in dangerous conditions. And today she explains how one community in Austin is now seeing some accountability.
February's freeze exposed many issues that would have otherwise gone unnoticed, and now some housing agencies are saying they're using this as a learning experience. There's not a lot of peace and quiet in Lisa Ream's home these days.
Instead to just keep it on.
This noisy new addition to her apartment is an air purifier. It's supposed to get rid of mold from the storm.
Hopefully it is doing something, because it sure makes a lot of noise. These are supposed to last 60 days. It's been 21 days.
The water in these bags Reams bought are from the moisture in the air.
And this is bag number 2.
Reams lives at Rosemont Oak Valley in southeast Austin. The mother of 4 is one of dozens of residents who have complained about the conditions here.
That's that rat poop.
Since February, there have been around 45 complaints with the Austin Code Department. A report the property owner submitted to the state says the complex has storm damage in 92 units.
I was sitting down eating and rat poop fell through the vent into right where I'm sitting at eating.
But Reams says she's had problems long before February's freeze.
If it wasn't for Uri, they wouldn't be paying attention to these needs.
It's also what took public housing officials to pay attention. This is Patrick Howard. He's the executive vice president of the Strategic Housing Finance Corporation of Travis County.
The storm probably just highlighted other things that were going on that we weren't aware of.
SHFC works with private developers and public entities to provide funding for affordable housing projects like Rosemont Oak Valley, which it owns.
We should obviously hold ourselves accountable, and again, I think we've come to the realization of why there needs to be more involvement, even if we're entrusting someone to take care of these things on our behalf. We're still the owners.
Howard says since the storm, they are stepping up their involvement and communication with tenants and advocates.
See, the other side is off.
While Howard says they are making improvements, residents like Reams say it's much of the same. Now they're taking matters into their own hands.
We could be one group, but we can also make that one voice. And that voice can be strong as long as we stick together.
Thanks, Jamil. The former property management group recently ended its contract, and SHFC had hired a new management company. We reached out to them for comment, and we're waiting for a reply. Nonprofit groups working closely with Rosemont residents tell us the new management company is still failing to make good on multiple promises they made publicly to tenants.
And despite
mold is actually a growing health hazard emerging all across the state. Although a potentially deadly issue, it's a problem left largely unregulated. Our Jamil Donath explains.
Ramon Palacios has been living with mold since his apartment flooded in February. It's on the walls, the ceiling. Water damaged his floors and his carpets.
He says that every morning his carpet gets wet.
And these large holes in his walls expose his apartment to outside elements.
He says that every time he opens this room, he has to take everything out because it starts smelling like rotting.
Palacios is one of hundreds of renters in the Austin area with moldy apartments and one of thousands throughout Texas. The CDC says mold can cause respiratory issues when exposed to large amounts and in people with health problems. Palacios has diabetes and recently had a kidney transplant. A note from his doctor says he is at high risk for illness and needs proper living conditions.
And they haven't told him anything that he has to move or anything. They haven't found another place for him.
Palacios reported all these problems to the property staff and the Austin Code Department. His case is now escalated from a notice of violation to a citation. But the Code Department doesn't regulate mold or conduct mold inspections. Texas doesn't have any laws addressing landlords' duties or liability in dealing with mold.
The conditions are unacceptable.
Councilmember Greg Kazar is working to change that. The City Council passed his resolution aimed at strengthening regulations and accelerating enforcement.
And the city has the authority to say you can't rent new units out to people until you make these repairs, and I think that might be what's necessary here.
Kazar represents District 4, which has the most code complaints and violations out of any other district in Austin. It's also a community of immigrants and low-income residents like Palacios, who are disproportionately impacted by unsafe housing conditions.
We need to put in new rules to make it really clear that mold is unacceptable and against city code. And then we also need to be able to hold property owners accountable for making quick repairs.
Property owners like Palacios say the delays in repairs are because there are so many apartments with storm damage and it takes time to fix them all. But for Palacios and other renters, their patience has worn out.
And Jamil Donath joins us now with more on this story. Jamil, Charles and I watching this story this morning, our jaws were on the floor. This is absolutely appalling video, knowing that Texans are living in these conditions. You know, we heard in your story, Palacios has a doctor's note dictating his condition. And on the flip side, there's no laws for any property owner liability. So what are the next steps for Palacios to get some sort of resolution here?
Well, you know, I will tell you that this is probably one of the worst cases I've seen is here at Mueller Flats Apartments, where Palacios lives, and where we are this morning. And they actually have more than 100 cases open with the Austin Code Department, and they are registered with the Code Department's Repeat Offender Program. Now, we just got this information in today that I wanted to share with you because the property management group told me that all of these cases were related to storm damages that they could not control. But the Code Department just told me that they actually were put on the repeat offender list not because of storm damages, but because of various prior issues that they've had. So this is an ongoing issue with a lot of apartment complexes in, again, low-income areas where there have already been housing infrastructure problems. So for Palacios, he has reported all of this to the Code Department. There is that citation now outside of his property. And he's also working with nonprofits, and they happen to be really right now the biggest tool for residents to get help because they're the ones that can step in and help them with legal support. But again, it's really a troubling issue and why a lot of council members and lawmakers are really wanting to address it.
All right, well, residents in one of East Austin's historically black neighborhoods have been without heat or hot water for more than a month. It's due to a gas outage, and it's exposing even more issues with Texas low-income properties. At its core appears to be a lack of oversight at the state and local levels. Our Jamil Donath joins us now live from East Austin. Jamil, what have you found out?
Well, families here at Mount Carmel Apartments behind me have been out without heat, hot water, and hot food for more than 30 days. Now, city leaders and nonprofits have finally stepped in to help out, but tenants are continuing to ask why it is taking so long to get this problem resolved.
I ain't no telling where he's going.
Taniqua Brewster's balcony is normally a place of peace.
You can catch me here most of the days. And be happy with showers outside.
But on this night, it's a podium to empower. This mother of 5 organized this private meeting for her neighbors.
We can't lean on anybody but each other.
But as you see, we come out as a community and we're all trying, we're all talking to each other, one another.
We're not trying to fight, but we're going to do what's right for us and what's fair.
This all started on February 20th, just days after losing power from the Texas snowstorm.
After the lights came back on, we were in the dark about our gas.
And so were city leaders. Natasha Harper Madison is on the Austin City Council. She represents East Austin. Yet she says it took 10 days for her to find out about the gas outage.
Shouldn't this have triggered something? This is a multifamily property that has children, disabled people, elderly people. I think after multiple days, it should trigger something somewhere.
Harper Madison says she is working with property management. They have provided portable showers, laundry, an electric skillet, and nonprofits are paying for hotels. Brewster and other neighbors told us the hotels were too small and unclean. Brewster still boils water on this cooktop she purchased herself. Now her kids get all their hot meals with tickets from this makeshift food truck.
Thank you.
What they want to do is they want to band-aid the issue. That's what I keep saying.
Housing Commissioner for East Austin, Bertha Delgado, says at this point, this is not enough.
Our residents should not be in this condition at all.
While the property owner is ultimately responsible for fixing the repairs, there's a long list of agencies involved.
We're hearing it's this person's fault, it's that person, this person is private owned, and this is city owned, and this is a state issue.
All of these play a role in overseeing this property, which city leaders say clearly did not happen.
I think we failed this community, and I'm doing everything in my power to fight to get it right.
Delgado says this is nothing new for black and brown communities.
We are highlighting what's been happening here in East Austin.
A note from property management says they are testing gas lines. Even when all repairs are done, the property has to pass a city inspection and then a Texas Gas Service inspection. And there's no telling how long that will take.
and there's really no end in sight.
Brewster says what her community really needs now is gas, not gaslighting.
Some are still living in homes with storm damage, while others have been displaced entirely.
Yeah, that's right. For renters, though, the choice isn't even theirs to make. Our Jamel Donath has been following these stories over the past several months and found inconsistencies in how tenants are treated and who is holding landlords accountable. Take a look.
My desk is over there and big TV, and there is no cracks, there's no mold, there's no mildew, there's no soft floors.
Walking through Colin Duffy's 3-bedroom apartment, it's not hard to see it's in pretty good shape.
In accordance with the lease contract.
So it came as a major shock to Duffy and his 2 roommates when they got this letter from property management claiming their home was unsafe to live in.
I was just in complete, utter dismay. My house, while not perfect, is definitely not a condemnable residence.
The letter says property management is terminating their lease. They have 7 days to remove all their belongings or they would be thrown out.
I started just like throwing all my books in boxes. I literally was about to walk out the door to go roller skating, and I sat down and started looking for new places to live.
While his roommates started packing, Duffy started researching.
This is wrong and I'm going to show them.
Under Texas property code, a tenant or landlord can terminate a lease without any penalties in the event of a disaster when the home is uninhabitable.
And say, look, this isn't right.
Tenant rights lawyer Jennifer McGeorge says this isn't the first she's heard of cases like Duffy's. She says it's often from a misunderstanding or misuse of the law.
Texas law does not ever allow a landlord to complete something called self-help eviction, meaning they come in and just toss you out on the street without going to court first.
However, McGeorge says the bigger problem is the laws themselves.
I could go on for days about the holes and about the problems and the ambiguities and the contradictions.
Hi.
On the day we went to his house, Duffy had an appointment with a code inspector. We were not allowed to record the inspection, but it didn't take long to complete.
He immediately agreed that this was not a condemnable property whatsoever. It took him probably 30 seconds to come to that conclusion.
Luckily for Duffy, he has some experience dealing with storm damages. He says as a former FEMA contractor, he's inspected more than 300 homes following natural disasters. The property's corporate office sent us a written statement saying the extent of damage in some apartment homes also resulted in the need to perform repairs in neighboring units that may have initially appeared unaffected. Duffy showed us those apartments, but he says the construction has nothing to do with storm damage repairs, but to make way for a new luxury complex, which was set to begin in July, when its lease was supposed to end.
I could tell it was accelerating their deconstruction efforts.
Duffy says the only reason this construction is affecting him is because he's being forced to move out.
Texans are unfortunately still feeling the effects of that winter storm. Some renters were even forced to leave their homes for months. Our Jamel Donath shows us where they are now and what's being done to help.
There are many apartment complexes that are still dealing with damages from February's freeze, and some residents are still living in temporary housing, like the hotel behind me.
It doesn't last a whole week. They clean my room on Wednesday, so.
For about 2 months, Keisha Prince has called this hotel room home. She was forced to move out of her apartment because of water damage and mold.
It's taking a toll. It's taking a toll.
Property management told her and nearly 90 other residents her unit was uninhabitable because of storm damages.
My place is supposed to be completely demoed.
It's really frustrating for people.
Renters and housing advocates gave city and county leaders a tour of the many repair issues at their Austin apartment complex. One of those leaders was Travis County Commissioner Ann Howard.
We need to fix this situation. This is not fair to these families. Now it's been brought to light, and we need to fix it and not let this happen again.
Rosemont at Oak Valley is one of numerous apartment complexes still dealing with damages 7 months since the storm.
We always encourage everyone to call 311.
Daniel Word is an assistant director with the Austin Code Department.
We can work the case.
The agency reports they responded to nearly 800 cases related to the storm. There are about 50 cases still active.
We'll certainly take this experience and remember it going forward in terms of how we can quickly adapt our department to respond to these types of crisis situations.
Now the department is working on implementing a new resolution to enforce mold through training and outfitting officers with moisture meters.
I think that'll help guide us to alert us to situations where repairs aren't being done as well as they should be.
Meanwhile, Basta is working with Rosemont tenants to repair what they say is a long history of neglect.
Everybody needs to wake up and look at property they're managing and make sure they're doing it right.
I feel like we have some kindergartners in charge of us, you know, and they're in romper room while we're in hell.
Prince just found out she will have to move to another hotel room at the end of September if her apartment isn't finished.
In here.
So the road to recovery is far from over.
Roseland Oak Valley Tenants Group is working with BASTA to get the Housing Authority Board to change its bylaws to better protect renters' rights. As part of the pilot project, the department will work with industry professionals to create guidelines for landlords and test out how beneficial moisture meters are.